So welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today we are going to talk to Wayne Steiger again. And yeah, what are the challenges that humanity is facing? That will be our subject. So, and I, Wayne, would like to start with a quote that I read in an article. I will leave one sentence out simply because YouTube is again on a canceling spree.
Oh boy.
For all those who would like to read the entire quote, the article is titled Bad Faith Olympics. So it says, this is the weirdest time in human history. By far, nothing else comes even close. Civil society unable to form a coherent thought. Institutions lie in smoldering ruins. Poisons handed out like candy. We are Neanderthals with iPhones. So, does anything speak to you?
Oh, it would be almost an optic of what our modern culture has become.
Mhm.
Neanderthals. In fact, I think the Neanderthals would take offense for being called that because I think we're even more dumber than they are. Yeah, we are in a time, Judith, no doubt, that is breaking all perceptual norms of what a modern society is supposed to be.
Mm. Um, I think there is a case to be made for a highly developed civilization that we have lost, that we do not know anything about. There are too many, yeah, let's say, awkward things that we have found unearthed in archaeology and that simply do not fit our understanding of a particular time. So, do you think we are going to experience something similar, the decline? Because we don't know why that civilization really declined. Yeah, there are speculations, yes, but do you think we are going down in a handbasket?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. I was talking about this not too long ago. So you think of modern Homo sapien, of which we are, or if you want to get technical, I guess Homo sapien sapien,
Hmm.
um, and something is wrong. Some believe that we are on the precipice of this sixth great civilization collapse. That means five prior civilizations tried to reach a pinnacle of something even greater than ourselves, but they collapsed. We're seeing modern day intelligent quotients going down. If we're really a species, let's say, have been around for 100,000 years, or let's take the Abrahamic belief that let's say we've been here 7,000 years. Well, if you take those reasonings, then it would say that that baseline would then be the first human or first humans, and that would measure our intelligence. So we know that they lived long. Records of a pre-Adamic world said they lived to over 1,000 years old. Um, so they obviously had to have an intelligence of a pretty high IQ. Some have speculated we may have been looking at IQs of 300. I mean, they were discovering astronomy. They were discovering the will, the forces of nature itself. But today, we now see the average here in the United States, that average IQ score is now below 100. And the average lifespan is about, if you're a dude, 74 something years. If you're a woman, 78 years. We don't even get to live 100 years. So something I believe is genetically wrong with us. I think that we are an experiment that whoever is in the kitchen have said, now that recipe isn't working. We're just going to have to throw it out. And I think we're on that verge.
But wouldn't that mean that in somewhere in the past, somebody had to intervene again to make that happen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm convinced that this was not as Darwin would suggest, an evolution of an amoeba beginning to expand. I don't
No.
know if nature works that way. I think that, if reality is our five physical senses, three chemical, two electrical, then that tells me that there can be this thing called life that has this ability to form atoms, molecules, structure.
Mhm.
Well, we
Um,
can do it, Judith. We can create life in the petri dish now.
yeah.
I mean, we can create it's interesting. We can create beings that have a brain but nothing else. We can get one with a heart. It's interesting what we call life, but that is life. It's actually reproducing itself. So
Hmm. Yeah. So what would you say? What do you see as big challenges that we are facing?
hmm, where do you start? Um,
Yeah, I don't think that we will complete it tonight because we
I don't
would be
think so.
sitting here like, I don't know.
I've been doing this series this week, Judith, on mind control.
Hmm.
And one of the things I pointed out in this research, every religion is mind control.
Yeah.
Every political ideology is mind control. If we're interfacing with a computer screen or a television screen, that's what they call the flicker rate. Each country has a different flicker rate here in the United States, but it's a flicker rate. If you study hypnosis, that's how you hypnotize people, is
Hmm.
by the flicker rate. So there is this thought that says that all of us are now hypnotized. We've never seen in a time where humans have become so reliant upon their technology that we can't say what's going to happen. What we're seeing, though, is this continued degradation of ability to remember, ability to actually have what we would call original thought. And the problem is we have governments now that have struck strong agendas that the fighting for the person's mind, capturing a person's mind for follow our ideology has become so rampant that we as a species, we no longer know what's real or what's not real. That has an effect, I believe, upon our species that eventually it's going to lead to our collapse. It would appear that that's exactly where we're heading for. We're right now in the midst of the single largest migration of humanity ever written about. We can read the past when these migrations on smaller scales took place. It was disastrous for the ones that were coming in to occupy. Those who were there first got wiped out.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
my concern is here in the United States, for instance, we don't know how many people we've let over our borders. That our own government is telling us, well, yes, there are terrorists that are crossing. We know. We don't know where they are, but we know that they crossed over. And to me, this is looking like the next plan of this controlled series of events that are orchestrated. It appears that if you go by everything that's being said, next year in the United States, civil war is expected. Regardless of how our elections turn out, it's being prepared for. Um, and look what Europe and NATO is doing. We now
Mm.
have the NATO chief who said yesterday that yes, Ukraine is going to be a part of NATO. That's declaring World War III. What is wrong with us? There's no the insanity of what we have seen today in the world is that there's no longer logic or common sense. It seems that everything that is going towards is to push us over the cliff. And I think once we start getting that push over the cliff, there's no stopping it.
Hmm. Where do you see indications that there are preparations for a civil war?
Oh, for here in our country, militias are, it's the real big thing our government is concerned about. Because in the Constitution, the citizens have right to form militias. It's part of our constitutional liberties. They don't like that. The other aspect of what we're seeing on the world stage, the United States is now the financier for World War III. We know that it's so heavily censored that people in the United States really doesn't know what's going on. You're in Germany, you probably have a different perspective than we do, but you're much closer to what eventually is going to become this battlefield.
Mhm.
Um, so there's just huge indications we're spending money that we no longer have. That's perpetuating a potential economic collapse. Our dollar no longer has the value. And if you want to see what happens when countries' currency collapse, well, we know what it was in the Great Depression. Germany knew right before World War II what had happened. The mark had completely collapsed and it was of no value. That is a form of warfare for the inhabitants of that country. Food. We're seeing already here in the United States where people can no longer afford to eat, but yet we now have an influx of over, they're estimating anywhere from 10 to 15 million people in the last 3 years have migrated into the United States. The problem is these people are not educated. They come from very poor countries, so they basically are being dependent upon the resources of the host country, us. Well, this is now starting to show up in the cities and the different city meetings where the residents are saying, wait a minute, you're taxing us, you're taking our resources and you're giving them away to people that don't even belong here. That's a typical what you need for a civil war. And when food becomes in short supply, or because of inflation, because of bad monetary policy, that where people can't afford to eat, then people begin to steal. Then you see a complete breakdown of what you would call the social structure of what we know as modern society.
Hmm. Yeah.
And now, can
Um,
I add one other thing to that?
excuse
So
me.
there's one other thing going on top of all this. It was announced that the scientific paper just came out, but the evidence and the conclusions were brought last year in 2023. The leading scientists, the geophysical scientists on magnetic, the magnetopause, 2023, we hit the inflection point. And what that means now for your listeners is that the weakening of our magnetosphere is about 39, 40%. We passed over the 50% mark, and if you saw it, it would be like this. We're now heading over the edge. We know that this is going to have huge impacts. It's not the fact that climate change is not real. It's just that our scientists and our governments are not telling us what to begin to prepare for. We're about to see catastrophic weather patterns that not are caused by man. No, it's caused because of our magnetosphere is weakening. The side effect is that we're being bombarded right now with cosmic rays that prove to drive us crazy. So if we're looking for a total pole reversal, which they're anticipating now about 2045, the effects between now and then are going to be wild.
Hmm. Um, because you just mentioned this, the migration. I don't know if you have noticed what happened last weekend here in Germany. There was a demonstration of Islamists, and round about 1,100 people were there. Majority were Muslims, and they demanded to turn Germany into a caliphate.
Oh, shit. Excuse me.
So, and yeah, and they also threatened that if the media, because the media is, they do not ever write anything against the migrants, but they threaten the media and politicians if they do not change their course towards Islam, there is hell to pay.
Mm, mm.
So the police did not, if you threaten to overthrow the entire state, then that is illegal here.
It's
And
here as well. They'll arrest you for that.
yeah. So usually that is the moment when the police intervenes and says, now this party is over. Um, but they didn't do anything. They were just standing there, uh, contrary to what happened during COVID, where they had no qualms,
Mm.
attacking protesters for really minor reasons. Well, okay. And here's my question now. The media, the first day, they didn't report at all about it. But on social media, so many people were sharing the videos and articles that alternative media had written, so they had no other choice. They had to say something. And one of these government funded TV stations, they actually went as far as framing that particular demonstration as a extreme right-wing demonstration. Yeah.
Well, that okay.
Yeah, okay. And so, and here's my question. There was a meeting in Hamburg. It took place in Hamburg. And there was a meeting in Hamburg, and because there was a, they had to discuss it because there were people who wanted that this demonstration cannot happen here on German soil. But all the lefties, of course, were for it. And here's my question now. Um, I mean, none of this makes really sense. On the one hand, now here in Germany, you can switch your gender once a year only by saying it in the office. Yeah. So that means from now on, let's say a woman has fled from her abusive husband, and we have here locations for women that have been abused, and they can stay there for a while until they found a place to stay and whatever it is. Because sometimes that is a reason that women stay, although they have been battered for years. So now the guy can go to that office and declare himself a woman and go into that protected space where his wife fled to.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and on and goes. And do you know, I mean, let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say Germany would actually turn into a caliphate. That would be the end of gay pride parades. That would be the end of transgender children. That would be the end of Christopher Street Day and what have you. Yeah, the whole 9 yards. And why are they doing it? Because everything that they are pushing on the one hand would be all those things that would be terminated right away.
It makes one think that are we seeing some sort of mass hypnosis? It's because why would a person endorse and encourage the destruction of their own culture, their own way
Yeah.
that they came up. Because that we're humans. We all of us want to have traditions. We want to have, we remember the way that we were by our parents' instruction and subsequently our government. It represented the morality view of what we were as a people. Now, I don't understand why someone would sit by, and I'll just be very blunt. I was born 10 years after the end of World War II. I know it very well because it was still very much when I was growing up. Um, I don't understand why people would want to enslave themselves when they have been the most free that they ever have been. It's insane because it doesn't make sense. Now, if you choose to follow a particular ideology, theology, that's your choice, but don't force it upon me. Don't expect me to come and change my whole history, who and what I am and what I believe in. And
Mm.
that's not going to work. And we saw that. World War II was two ideologies that were opposed to each other. We're getting set up for the same thing again, but this one we're going to make as a religious war because now you're going to bring God into it. World War II was about good and evil. We didn't define what good and evil was other than the construct that you had the Allies and you had the Axis. That's how it was. Very
And
simple.
both were evil.
Yeah, they were one and the same club. Uh, but religious wars throughout history have been the bloodiest, the most violent,
Mm.
and most destructive. And that is a fear that I have greatly because in our country here, the United States, it is quote unquote perceived that the United States was a Christian nation. Well, the United States never had any religion. But if you have it that that's what people think, then you have an influx of people coming in who have no ties, no association with your beliefs. They're going to start changing the way it is here to what they had one. That's where conflict comes in, and that's dangerous. A religious war. I just can't believe Germany is not waking up to this. A caliphate is, it comes directly out of the Quran. It says to basically kill all infidels.
Yeah, it comes with Sharia law.
Yeah, I will not submit ever to a Sharia law. I mean, if you take it and go do it, but not here. I mean, no, no, I won't do that. But then again, I'm not addicted. The young, unfortunately, we see these, and we're seeing it here. Um, People protesting on U.S. campuses, and they're protesting a group that is not a very friendly group. And as you said earlier, they had did an interview because the LGBTQ plus plus had a sign out there with all these protests, and the reporter went up and said, "Well, you realize that if you were in Palestine as a homosexual, they kill you."
Hmm.
The look on this girl's face was, she's like,
Yeah.
she's like, "Are you serious?" Like, yeah. So we got these culture wars coming. And then you've got governments that seem to be provoking this division, this bifurcation. When you would think that the government would be there to protect its citizens first and ensure the safety and the prosperity of one nation. But when that doesn't happen, then what do you have? You have people beginning to lose hope. And then with that comes chaos. And so, Judith, here we sit. I believe that 2024 will be the last normal year that we will really remember. Listen, the Queen said it. She said it a couple of Christmases ago that coming very quickly, there will be no more Christmas. And the
Mm.
only way I know that that happens if you have a world at war. And then let's just say that we have the sun decides to let off an X-class 100 flare, which we're way past due on. It would fry in the United States our complete electrical grid, means all the internet would go down, all smartphones would go down. You would have people who were basically blinded. Now, people in this United States here that are preppers, this is what we prepped for. We knew that one day this grid was going to go down. There was going to be a collapse. I was a consultant to the Federal Reserve. I know payment, I know banking, and we are far past the precipice of a collapse of a proportion that most people in the modern world have never experienced before. But when you combine this all together, that's when things begin to get serious. A person can go without water for 3 days, not a problem. A person cannot go without food, without hunger taking over after the third day. After the third day, you have complete anarchy.
Yeah, yeah. Although,
Welcome to Earth, you know. That's why there's no aliens. They're looking
yeah,
at this going, hell no, we're we'll
yeah,
come in after y'all go ahead and destroy the whole place.
yeah. Although real anarchy is not violent and it just means no rulers.
That's what it means. I mean, no rule of law. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
not
know, again, it's like,
rule
do
of
you need
law. I wouldn't say that. You basically adhere to do no harm, the universal law.
bingo, bingo. Yes. Do no harm unto others.
Yeah,
Pretty basic. I mean, you really
yeah,
don't need a religion around that. You don't need a political party. It's just common sense. It's like, all right, yeah.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, we have also people here in Germany that are telling us, politicians, of course, um, we have to get ready for war. That is,
What do
that,
y'all think about that? I mean,
look, the argument always is that Putin will not stop with Ukraine. They try to convince people that Putin will come to Germany, to the Netherlands, to France, to that basically Putin is going to annihilate all of the EU. I would say the EU is doing a great job
Putin doesn't have
facilitating
to do
that
anything.
themselves. Yeah. They actually do not need Putin for that. Also, what does he want with these countries? They
That's
are
the
totally
good
nuts.
question.
They are totally nuts. Um, financially ruined. There's just this very thin layer, this facade of a functioning state, which in reality no longer exists. So, what does he want with those countries? I would stay away, like, Jupiter out.
Yeah. I mean,
And
my,
and here's the funny thing. Then they always talk about, yeah, in 5 years we have to be ready. Really, in 5 years. So let's say, okay, yeah, Putin doesn't read the newspapers. He, of course, has no intelligence network. And so he will not know that in 5 years you are ready. And then what? If he really wants to sack the rest of the EU, um, will he wait 5 years until you boys are ready? I mean, none
like,
of that, if
the
you
doors
think
aren't
about
open
it.
yet. We got to clean up a little bit before you come in, Putin. You know,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, what nonsense is that? I
it's
see absolutely zero indication that Putin has an interest at not stopping at Ukraine. Why would he?
yeah.
Why would he burden himself with countries full of nut jobs?
Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what my concern is? It's not Russia. Now, of course, I live here in the United States. My biggest concern is China.
Mm.
Um, that's the one that the world needs to be watching. And we're talking about potential World War III here, but then you got to go, okay, so what if the Arabs and the Jews go after with each? What if someone pops off a nuke? Well, then how do you begin to look at that? Then we got to look at it here in the United States is that, well, what if China goes after Taiwan? Does the United States honor its agreements with Taiwan? Do we take on the Chinese head to head? The Chinese own the presidency here in the United States. Their influence is it's not the Russian gate. That never was the problem. It's the Chinese gate.
Mm.
But yeah, and that's the classic move of manipulation. You get people so focused over here in Ukraine and what have you, and the United States, and I know Germany and the rest of it, we're sending billions of dollars, and all we're doing is making certain oligarchs rich, certain politicians who are doing the money laundering, because we don't audit. We don't care where it goes. We're just sending them money over there. And in the meantime, you've got this other thing that really is the problem. Um, yeah, I don't know. As you were talking about this and how Germany and how you're looking at this with World War III, and I think about in our country where we're saying that this war is coming within there, our government, our own Department of Justice is telling us that there's going to be a terror attack. It's going to be bigger than 9/11. How do they know this? And what do you mean bigger than 9/11? What does that supposed to mean? 9/11 shut the world down, if everyone remembers.
Mm.
Shut it down. So, I mean, I'm going, well, okay. So if all of this is happening, and I don't know if you saw my show I did on the Deagle report, and the Deagle report showed that Germany is going to lose 67% of your population. The United States, we're up closer to 70. Great Britain is almost 80%. Something is going to happen that's going to wipe out a lot of people. So what is it? And then you say, well, okay, well, that's just conspiracy. Okay, but if I sit back and I look at seeing what world governments are doing right now, it damn sure simulates or correlates very closely. They're expecting a lot of death.
Mm.
That's
Um,
what I'm concerned about. And it's like we said at the beginning of this, when you asked that question, it's not just a simple, if we could just say it's compartment A, all we have to do is figure A out. It'll take care of B and C. No, the problem is it's from A to Z and maybe some other grief alphabet that I haven't figured out.
mm. There is a theory out there, not quite sure what to make of it, but it also deals with some type of catastrophe. How that is structured, I don't know. But some type of catastrophe, some say, yeah, it will be connected to the pole shift. And then they say the reason for depopulation is because when they come out of their bunkers, it's easier to rebuild for a few people than for the masses.
Yeah, the Georgia Guidestones, which by the way were mysteriously blown up, never investigated. But remember what they warned us. They
Mm-hmm.
told us, they gave us the what was it, the 10 laws, and they said no more than 500 million people.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think there was something to that. Again, yeah. And have you ever seen the video on that, Judith? Whatever that was that blew that thing up was not a typical explosion like with dynamite or C4. This one had electrical look to it, almost laser-like. It was very odd.
yeah, the lightning around it was very
Mm.
weird.
Yeah.
Mm.
And odd that they had a bulldozer and a dump truck waiting. What? Okay, someone got the memo that we didn't get.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
coincidences, huh?
nothing. It's just like, you know, I see all this, and then, my background was a Christian. I was a Christian for 50 years, ordained minister, and left the religion. But I'm sitting here and I'm going, so now this is a great time to say, well, this is what, God's going to do, because God's got to clean up the mess. But God never made the mess. We did. And
Yeah.
if God's going to clean up the mess, we're going to mess it up again. And it seems like, again, there's no, here's the insanity, Judith. I don't understand why we don't have a public platform, someone out there speaking an alternative to all this. Where's the peacemakers? Where in Europe is anyone standing up in the parliaments, the EU, standing and going, what about peace?
Oh,
Can we stop?
there are people,
Well,
but
they're not being, we don't hear them over here because we don't have
oh
any over
yes, we
here.
do have, yeah, we have politicians like that in both in our parliament and in the EU as well. You know what happens to them? One, and no, two, recently in the EU Parliament, they got their microphone switched off.
See?
Yeah, okay. And and here in I haven't heard that that happened in the Bundestag in Berlin. But what usually happens here, if you stand up for peace, you will be labeled, of course, a right-wing extremist and a
Sure.
Putin troll.
Yeah. Because we know love just really sucks, you know. It's like, no, we don't want none of that love crap. Keep that over there. And, well, my goodness, peace brings prosperity and it brings commerce, it brings opportunity. No, you can't have that either. I mean, when will the world wake up? We are more than they are. And we
Hmm.
we are. In every prison, the prisoners outnumber the guards sometimes 100 to 1. And it's though that this mind control, this mechanism, it suppresses us to the point where these ideas of when we see violence, that someone isn't saying, well, now wait a minute, we can love one another. I don't see this anywhere anymore. And I've talked about this on my channel many times. That's not normal. It tells me that there's an agenda, something is going on when you suppress even the thought of peace. Love thy neighbor as thyself. You know, we don't hear that. It's not in the youth. The youth just hears all violence and rage and, express yourself and this. And at the same time, we're tearing ourselves apart. I don't know. Barry
Hmm.
Maguire was right, back in the 60s. We are on the eve of destruction.
Yeah.
And I hate saying that because I'm an optimist. I'm a hippie. I enjoy rock and roll. I enjoyed the freedom. I was part of the counter revolution, if you want to say, the late 60s and early 70s. But, the idea was not to carry a gun. The idea was to carry a flower and a joint, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it was, you know?
Yeah, but funny enough, out of that generation came a lot of people that, facilitated this mess.
Yes, and that's the weird thing about it is that in fact it's the baby boners.
Ah,
Freudian slip if I ever heard one. But the boomers are really, we are the foundation of the problem. I
yeah.
mean, we're the ones that with these messed up ideologies. It's crazy, and you're right. I mean, so I guess it wasn't all as what it was cracked up to be, right? And because I don't see that generation, my generation, I guess, I never assume anything, but the baby boomer generation, where is our generation speaking about that love again? Where's that Woodstock vibe? We don't want war. You know, we didn't like we protested the war. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's
But
an answer, it may not be a perfect one, but it's better than the alternative of dropping bombs and seeing people with disease and viruses and starvation, and you can't heat your house, you can't find the source to cook with, if you can even find the food at all. Most governments are now saying it's illegal to pick forage. I mean, you know. Even in the Old Testament, the poor got the farmers knew to leave the some of the crop left in the field so that the poor people could come in and have food.
mm,
But
yeah.
now all the farms here in the United States are owned by big corporations.
Yeah, and I also read that 2/3 of the most fertile soil in the Ukraine is owned by US companies.
Does not surprise me. Maybe that's where our money's going to. I don't know. But yeah, because the Ukraine is really kind of the breadbasket for all of Europe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I know the
It's a
United
very
States got a lot of
fertile
grain
soil.
from.
Yeah.
Did they, you see, and that brings in that other thing. In the United States, and you can check me out online on this. So if you look at how many food processing, food distribution companies, buildings that have been destroyed, we're over 1,000. Come on, that you can't just tell me that's coincidence. That grain factory after grain factory, poultry after poultry, all catch on fire. That doesn't make sense. But that's what's happening over here.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, it can happen, but usually not all at the same time and not in
If
those.
I had that kind of luck, I'd be living in Las Vegas full time, baby. I'd be playing every lottery because the odds are I'm going to hit every time. That's what
Mm,
it's the equivalent to.
yeah.
And now we're being set up for the next whatever the world's got in store for us. I mean, we thought that the thing back in 2020 was bad. I think that was just a test run for something I think much more uglier and evil than what we can even comprehend.
Yeah. That was the blueprint, and it was the test. How far can we go?
In 2002, I wrote a book, I never published it, called The Start. And in the start, it was just like that. It was the start of the end of humanity. And it had several stories that were all combined. Anyway, part of this story was um, a group of renegade genetic scientists were able to harvest some of the Spanish flu, the N1N5 virus, and they were grafting that into an RNA structure so that it would be basically easily dispersed airborne. Um, and that I wrote, 20 plus years ago. There was another thing that I wrote as part of this was how the Dome of the Rock is blown up. And so I wrote these things over 20 years ago, and it's amazing now to see that so much of what I was writing about in the start has come about, and we're living it. We're actually living it. It's
Mm,
it's very odd. And again, it's almost, Judith, as if they don't want us to live. They're doing everything possible with as many different fronts to make sure something happens.
yeah. So would that be an argument for that this is a luge farm, and actually there are entities that are, I mean, since it, not that there haven't been buffets before, but especially since 2020, it must have been a hell of buffet. You
Mm,
know,
mm, mm.
in terms of suffering, negative feelings in general, and yeah, the whole nine yards. So, yeah,
We never recovered from that as a species. I
exactly.
mean, it's amazing. And it's interesting when you think about as far as maybe a higher intelligence is concerned. Uh, I did a video, oh, I guess it's been 6 years ago. I'll be on YouTube for 10 years in June, but I did a whole series on terraforming the planet. And it's interesting since I did that, how many movies, actually, I've seen a series that where they were terraforming our planet. Now, this is what I find very odd. If you look at where they're looking at the global effect, that we know oxygen percentages are going down. Well, that's not good for us up here. Our brains require oxygen more than anything else in that cognitive function. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if we have this magnetic shift coming up, and it's pretty well predictive that it's a cycle, it's a 12,000 to 6-year thousand cycle, that if there's an intelligent species and if planets are as rare as as Carl Sagan they said, Earth is he said would be a prized jewel in the universe. There's not that many Earths out there in the universe. And let's say there was a higher intelligence. Well, we would look, how would we even begin to know how to commute to a higher intelligence? But more importantly, what if they did have a sense of ethics and they're going to observe us and they realize that we don't have a clue of what we're doing here? Well, they could actually turn our planet into this profitable paradise of where we could actually see that there is no war, that there is only this opportunity of learning, you know, constantly enlightening our spirits, our souls to that. What if that is the case? And maybe if the only case is that they have to see us go bye-bye. We are by our species a murderous species. We lie, we cheat, we kill. That's because all of our gods do the same thing. And so
Yeah.
we emulate that which we worship. Look at Christianity. I left Christianity for a number of reasons because it's a blood cult religion. It's a false religion. But if you look at this, how many people have died in the name of Jesus? If you didn't convert, Europe was converted not willingly, but at the sword.
Yeah, sure.
I
And
don't, I'm no fucking genius, but I'm smart enough to realize that if you bring a religion, a mindset in by the sword, that ain't the right way, no matter what you're going to tell me.
yeah.
So anyway,
And
it,
then and Islam will try to do the
the
same
same
thing.
thing. Well, it's the Abrahamic religions. They're one
Yeah.
and the same.
Mhm.
Christianity is no different than Islam is to Judaism. They all worship the same God. They'll never agree to that, but they do. And the thing that gets me, Judith, if you really study, that's what I did. I started doing a background check on God. He failed. And the thing that what it was is that when I found out Dr. Noel Kramer, I got his book, Samaritans, the 39 first of humanity. No one talks about the Samaritans. But the fact was that they were there, we know 2,500 years before Abram ever came out, but we don't read anything about any Jewish, any Christian, or any Islamic God. It's either Enki or Enyel. I rest my case.
Sorry about that. I had to mute myself.
But these are truths. I mean, and so I look at this today and I ask myself, if we so-called have this God of love, where is it? It's absent. It's not existent. We look at love from a perverse lens. Love hurts. The song back in the 70s, love hurts. It's odd. And when we, as a species, when we could turn within ourselves and begin to look at our fellow person, neighbor, brother, sister, and realize, I ask people this all the time. You know, white persecution is happening here in the United States. Whites are being persecuted. And I ask people then, what color is your soul then? Tell me what color your soul is. Is it white? Is it black? Is it brown? I mean, that's how stupid we are as a species. We can't get past the pigment of a person's skin.
Hmm. Yeah.
Why would an intelligent species from another galaxy, another world, want to have anything to do with us? We are so debased in our reasonings, in our thinkings, that a higher intelligence would find us offensive and foul.
But you know what? There are a lot of species at war with each other as
That
well.
then means that this permeates this whole reality. And
Yeah.
that's going like, we can't win. I mean, let's say we can leave Earth. We're going to find the same thing out there. Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah. So all the research that I have done, that I haven't found, yeah, one that would not fall
No,
to warfare. So meaning that they are technologically, with all the trinkets that they are not more peaceful.
no, they're not. It would show that intelligence, is not equated with peace or empathy. It would be just the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, intelligence itself, that is neutral.
Yeah. And that's interesting. I once heard that true wisdom is just that, neutral as well. There's neither good nor evil, but it's easier to choose sides, because, we live in a
Yeah.
dualistic reality, or so they say. And when I do my ghost hunting, I have all my paranormal equipment. I film a lot of stuff. That there's very evidence that there is this other life. Now, whether they are all humans or what, but there's very evidence that there is something else. And I thought the other day is that if this destruction is coming, which appears that it is, we're about to flood the ether realm with potentially billions of people. Now, as a philosopher, as I look at this and I go, what effect would that have? In my Christianity, I was taught that nothing happens first in the physical unless it happens in the spiritual realm.
Mhm.
So then by logic of that thought is that then there's this destruction that's already been planned. Then who am I to stand in the midst of that and to say no? I mean, is this what has to happen? Is it truly the cycle of life and death, as the Moody Blues said, the Nights of White Satin? Is that from death, new life arises? Is that what it's going to take? Is that Earth's way of saying, here, this is the solution? You guys have gone. You think as a species, we've created these problems that we can't solve now. That's insanity.
Yeah. And I've read another quote that I found quite interesting, and the gentleman said, if your society descends into madness, your laws will reflect that.
Ooh. Yeah. And and then I'll just add this little caveat. What happens when the lawmakers don't follow the laws?
Exactly. Yeah. Or they make laws that, yeah, are totally
For
hurting.
thee, but not for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's always the case. I
That's
mean,
it.
here, Ursula von der Leyen, yeah, EU Commission,
It's
they
true.
they are now um the European prosecution and the Belgium prosecution, they are all investigating her. And we all know nothing will happen.
It's Kabuto theater.
Mhm.
It's what it is, because we know it. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we love getting up the sides. Oh, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Or
mean,
Christine Lagarde, she has been found guilty for fraud. Yeah, now she is head of the ECB.
go arrest her. I ain't, nah, man. I mean, no way, I ain't touching that.
Yeah.
It's like my saying. I have my saying is that, ignorance is a self-inflicted disease easily cured by knowledge. But if the knowledge holders won't let the knowledge out, then how are we ever supposed to cure the ignorance?
Hmm. So would you say there's what was it in the 70s? The one thing that the punks always said, no more future. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the looking glass device that they apparently have at the secret S4 base, that they say that if you interface with this device, that it will show you multiple futures
Hmm.
because the future is not set. But I can't help but not believe I think someone went in there and screwed the timeline up, because it seems awfully certain that listen, if the destruction happens, then you can say the book of Revelation was in fact a true prophecy.
Hmm.
And that's the problem I have with prophecy. If prophecy is accurate, then it doesn't matter what you and I do. There's already this higher plan that's going to take place, whether I'm a sovereign being or I'm not. And that I don't like. I don't like the aspect that my fate and my destiny is tied to something that I cannot stop nor prevent.
Hmm.
It, that's why yeah. We could really get into that subject, but anyway.
Yeah. So let's get some hope going here.
Well, there's always the hope. I mean, where I have found my hope is looking within,
Mm.
because I realize I if the future exists, I'm already dead. So are you. You and I are just merely living out either a memory or a thought. And so I can accept that. And I can accept the fact that if death is the inevitability, and my philosophy is this, everything I've read, I've been on this planet for 25,108 days. And the thing is that I've come to realize that this is the death realm. I'm dead. I think I'm alive, but I'm really not alive. Everything here dies. Everything I have to do to survive here, I have to eat. Everything I eat is dead. Death is the first thing that greets me when we're born. So that means I'm looking forward to life again. And I have a sense that that other side that awaits us is what we try to emulate here, but we can't see it any longer. We can't see what it looks like. And for a species, we're desperate to find that light again. I believe, maybe in hope against hope, Judith, that I believe that we may have the opportunity to see that light. Now, what we do with it, I don't know. If we ignore it, then we deserve what comes after that. But if we embrace it, might be the biggest change our species has ever known. It may save us.
If we embrace what?
That light, that what, that where I believe we're all destined. I don't think there is a heaven or hell. I think we're going back into where we once came from. And I believe that place is not a place of war. It's not a place of death. I don't know why we come here. I don't know if we're forced. I don't know if we do it voluntarily, but we do. We all experience this realm in all its varieties. And what I'm talking about, you had people of vision who were able to see a vision and then be able to create that vision so other humans could see it and make it happen. If we could build that utopia, even within all of our differences, that may be our hope. And maybe that's at the darkest hour is when we see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a very interesting little factoid about our species, that we appear to learn and to really evolve better through pain
Yeah.
than, if everything is hunky-dory. Then we have a tendency to just get sloppy. We no
We
longer,
repeat that, don't we?
yeah,
It kind of tells you something about maybe who and what we are. Maybe we're a species where we have to have the challenges. Maybe we do this to ourselves as a wake up call to our species. And maybe we'll see that golden era again. They said when Rome fell that that was the last Enlightenment era. I don't know. Rome had its beauty, but it wasn't perfect, as was Greece. I think I would have liked to have lived in the Babylonian era. I mean, if you want to talk about an era of enlightenment, that's where it would be in at. And this is just me. I know we're going a little bit over, but you see, um, the dark era took over when we brought in this thing called Christianity. And the dark ages were just that. They were dark ages. We lost the people lost how the ability to read, write,
mm,
arithmetic.
mm,
And we went into this thing, and I contend we may still be in the dark ages. Maybe this is where we emerge out of it. It's going to
yeah.
cost us.
Yeah, the Dark Ages, that was a huge setback. And
It
before
was.
that, we had the collapse of the Bronze Age. And there again, for 500 years, we lost the ability to read and write.
And then you think as well when the library at Alexandria
Mm,
was burned, and then subsequently the destruction of the library at Constantinople. They said that the Thebes River, it was black, they said, for days. That
mm,
knowledge. And as a study of the occult, I see in many ways there's a certain hope within the occult, is that the hope is to elevate us into a higher state of consciousness. And maybe this is the struggle we're seeing. Maybe this is what we're experiencing is that clash.
yeah.
That's a
And
message of hope.
yeah, do you know what we are doing now? We are losing the ability to read and write again, and without any real reason. And here,
Yeah. Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
now the circle is complete when I said when a society is descending into madness, your laws will reflect it. They are now openly discussing here in Germany no longer to count, um, you know, grammatical errors, and if people are not capable of writing a word correctly. They no longer want to count that. That would make for some interesting PhDs in the future, don't you think? If that
Bunch of
is no longer necessary,
bunch of dumbasses.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. But that's frightening. But it's true. They're doing it over here in medical and law schools now. You no longer have to have the GPA to get in, and they got this diversity, inclusion, and equity thing going on. And as a result, yeah, it's frightening. My wife, she reads 5 books a week. I'm probably, two or three, and then I read a slew of white papers and others, but we are the exception to that.
Mhm.
And when people find out that you read like that, we ask people all the time, well, how many books do you read? And it's always funny because they get embarrassed. Oh, well, I try to read one or so. Well, what was the last book you read? I can't remember. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Isn't there a movie about this book?
I'll watch the movie. And that's how it is. I mean, and we could get into a whole discussion of the advancement of how these black mirror devices. You want to talk about occultism? Your smartphone is a black mirror.
I don't have one.
See? I have one, but I don't like interfacing with it. I just don't. It's like, I hear you calling. Yeah, I ain't coming. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, wow, we really messed this one up, huh?
Well, at least the interview went well. That's all I
Oh,
can say. Ah,
yeah. Okay, Wayne, I thank you so much for coming. And we
Judith, I
haven't
love it
even,
every time. I gotta have you come on, on a live show on my noon show. So let's get you
yeah,
on. Yeah,
yeah. You
yeah.
always say that, but you never contact me.
Ah, listen, and I do this all the time, and it's like, it's not that I don't have the right intent. It's just many times it gets pushed back. However, I shall, as I am writing right now, if I put it on a whiteboard, it will happen. So,
Okay.
Judith, it will happen. In
Now I'm
fact,
on the whiteboard.
you're on the whiteboard. So, uh, and there you go. Probably I'll try to see about next week. How's that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, far out. See, now you're on the whiteboard.
Okay.
Right there.
So, yeah, any final words that you would like to leave us with?
Hey, love ultimately wins, and it's the discussion of what love is, but I think it really is if we could just find harmony again. I mean, that's what I hope for. It may be if we all think about it long enough, someone will actually arise out of all this chaos and say, hey, you know, there's an alternative way of approaching this. Because I think the world is ready for such individuals. I don't think it's just one. Hopefully, it's a group of them. Maybe the next generations will be that. That's what I hope. And I guess that's what all of us ultimately hope for is that our species will survive, it will prosper, and that our sacrifices today will bring a better world.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's hope for the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, we see you all next time, guys. And it was a little bit different today.
It always is with when I'm on this thing, it's like, wait a minute, we were supposed to go over there. No, let's look over here.
Okay, until next time. Bye bye.